Topic here, third market period essays. Give you some additional guidelines here. First one up, women and abortion, 1970s women issues. Why was Roe v. Wade or the ERA supported by 1970s women? So what you want to do for this essay is you really want to focus on the 1970s woman, particular Roe Wade or the ERA. Why were either of these two supported by women, certain women? Because essay prompt number 2 is asking you how the religious right responded to the ERA or Roe v. Wade. So you want to identify for this essay women who are on the religious right and what was their issue with either of these two. And again, you can focus on just this exclusively or this exclusively, or you could kind of combine the two. You're going to have to figure out which of those options you would like to pick there. De facto segregation replaces de jure. So de facto segregation is segregation by law, and de facto segregation is de jure segregation, segregation by law, and de facto segregation is by some other factor. And here are outlines some 1970s factors: busing, redlining, or white flight. So you want to first look up what these terms mean, and then you want to address the tactics. So we want to address busing, redlining, or white flight separately. We don't want to focus on all three of these. But then we want to look at either the tactics or groups identifying. So those individuals that are either for or against busing, what were they doing? Or redlining or white flight. So you want to identify some names, some people who are crucial for those particular movements, and then you want to move on. Homosexuality issues. So Harvey Milk was a gay politician, the first elected. So what did he do to challenge Prop 6? So this essay really is simple: Harvey Milk versus Prop 6. And I'm sure you can Google Harvey Milk debates and find some actual footage. I know on YouTube they did have some. Let's go to Harvey Milk debates. I'm going to put in Briggs. We want to get the actual, like this 78 interview here. The other one is from the movie Milk. So we want to take, maybe want to look at some of these, but I searched in Briggs because Briggs was the individual responsible for going after, so there you go, Briggs Initiative. Anyway, the next essay is asking you to write about Anita Bryant. So Anita Bryant was a woman who was against gay rights. And so you want to focus on the issues that were impacting her community in the 1970s. So here you have someone from the left, and here you have someone from the right. What were their issues? What were their concerns? Next essay topic, comparing the silent generation. So here we're looking at the silent generation to the baby boom and Gen X. So what was said about the silent generation? What did they experience, and what did these groups experience, and how are these two groups different from this group right here? So it's real simple on that essay. Make sure you have some specifics, but make sure you have reasons that are cited by historians. Do not make assumptions without credible sources. The gas crisis and environmentalists. So here we've looked at 1950s, the V8 motor, those big motors in those cars, and now the environmentalists are starting to, argue that we need to do something about regulating engines. So you have two essays you can write about: how the gas crisis, you'd have to first identify what that is, and environmentalists killed the auto industry of the 50s and 60s. So how did these groups here kill the auto industry? Or what policies? So this one you are going to look at specific policies. So I know that in the 1970s, the federal highway passed a speed limit. We know that OPEC cut back production. And we know that environmentalists passed laws that were designed to limit the amount of pollution that a car could emit from its exhaust pipe. The ARPANET and the Cold War. So the ARPANET is the origin of the internet. So if we did a search for ARPANET, we would come up with this. So we want to know what was the use of the ARPANET or the design of this. And now we're not talking about a computer, we're talking about a network of computers that are working together. So you're either focusing on the use of the internet, and there is a Cold War connection that you would have to establish, or the design. How was this designed? Notice how the history is starting to become a little more digital and less mechanical. If you're writing about general technology, you have to write about the internet and the origins and the Cold War. So now the difference between these two here is that this one really needs to be about the Cold War. This needs to be about the Cold War needs, and you probably want to focus on why the United States government would want to have some sort of device that would allow communication. You have to focus on the Cold War. By the end of this essay, I want to know, why was the Cold War, why was the internet a Cold War tool and a Cold War invention? For the essay up here, I want to know, what was this ARPANET used for, as well as, or what was the design like? I probably will get rid of this section. I got to think about that. Anyway, let's move on to the next topic. All right, so here we're looking at suburbs and mall development. So at this point, we're starting to see the birth of the suburbs over here. The suburbs are going to need some malls. And because the baby boom generation is really starting to increase in the 40s and 50s, by the time those newborns are teenagers, you're probably going to be in the 60s, and you're going to start to see suburbs and malls really being developed in the 1960s. So you want to focus on that, focus on where the concept of the mall came from. And if you're writing about terrorism, now we're looking at skyjacking list. So feel free to look at this book, The Skies Belong to Us, or go to the 9/11 page. You want to generate a list of skyjackings. So it's as simple as giving me a list of planes that were hijacked. You know, you want to maybe give me the list of the planes and also focus maybe on the motive, or you could focus on how. And that should be a chart that you are then going to somehow turn into an essay that gives me the same information. This question here, how did skyjacking methods evolve during the 60s? Do not reference 9/11. So for this second essay, it's really just about methods. I could tell you one individual put a bomb in a suitcase. One individual, I think, put fruit in a box and told the people it was a bomb. Another individual would use a gun. Another individual would use a knife. So how are the strategies changing? Lack of U.S. involvement during the Cambodian genocide. So once again, we're doing the same. The only difference is now we're looking at the Cambodian genocide. So you can go back to ProQuest and you can look up the Cambodian genocide. You also can go to my site on Holocaust, go to Cambodia, and you will find some articles there. How did the U.S. respond to reports about killing? So once the Cambodian genocide file opens up, we'll see some of that information. Here we see some New York Times articles about Sidney Schonberg. And as we go down, where are those documents? Right here. I want to focus right here. You cannot understand what's going on in Cambodia without understanding the Vietnam War, so I encourage you to look up the Ho Chi Minh Trail, Cambodian genocide. And what you're going to do for these two essays, you could post the New York Times articles in one, or you could, write about the U.S. response to the killings. What was being said in Washington about the killings, and I've already showed you some of those documents. That should act as a starting point. How did the Cold War influence politics? So all you really need to do here is focus on the U.S. politics. What did it do to the budget? What did it do for NSC 68? What did it do for presidents? Can presidents have a soft stance on communism, or do they always have to have a hard stance on communism? Can you be strong or weak against communism? That's what you want to focus on. The next topic for politics, we're back to the Asia migration. You want to look up the Hart-Celler Act and how this is going to lead to a boom in Asian migration. And it'll take you to this Immigration Nationality Act. All right, anyway. So we're looking for the boom. So if we notice here, we have seen restrictions. Those restrictions are going to be lifted, and you're going to see Asian migration to the United States go up. How and why does that process take place is your essay. Politics. The New Left adopts communist ideas. So we want to first identify what the New Left was, and then focus on the Black Panther Party, or SDS, and other left groups and how they started to adopt communism. So these groups, you could even throw in the Rainbow Coalition, start to look at collective suffering and how ultimately there might be the need for a communist revolution that's by the left. So you want to focus on the New Left adopting some of these ideas. A good starting point could be, I don't know if it's still there. I used to have a source here of the Black Panther Party. No, it's got to be third and fourth. Can't seem to find this article. This one right here, chapter 7. That's a good starting point for that essay. Let's move on. For this essay topic, you are going to be writing about fashion during the 1970s, and you want to focus on how people dressed, or how did fashion influence gender or racial identity. If you're looking in this section here, see some 1980s fashion. I don't know if there's any in the 70s tab. I'm not getting any JSTOR articles. I know there's one, I just can't find it just yet. I know I did a essay read with one of them. All right. So again, I mean, you feel free to use ProQuest to address this one. You could even use ProQuest for this. You really want to get a sense of how fashion changed during the 1970s, and you can focus on pretty much anything. Anti-communist music during the Cold War. So for this one, you need to address some communist music. And again, if you're writing about music, you cannot just give me your lyrics as a source. You need your lyrics as well as a JSTOR source. It just can't be one. Anti-communist music. Think about the song "I'm No Communist." That would be one that you can use as a starting point. Don't know who sings that. There we go. And if you're writing about the second one, you're writing about music and the Vietnam War with regard to these particular songs here. You could also watch the CNN soundtrack episode 3, which is about the Vietnam War, if you're able to locate that. How did music inspire the civil rights movement for African Americans? Focus on specific songs with hidden meaning and direct messages. So this one would be another one where CNN soundtrack did one on the civil rights movement. I'll have to add that in there. but you want to focus on how music inspired the civil rights movement for African Americans. For example, we could type in civil rights movement, dancing in the street. Probably will get some stuff here. That could be a good starting point. JSTOR is going to bring up dancing in the streets. JSTOR, look at that. So I mean, that's it for essay topics for the third mark.